Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's currently Thursday, Jan 5th, 2012, Day 9 Daily 396, Part 2 of 4. We're going to be doing a 4-part daily today, so that way we can get a comprehensive survey of Mech. In Part 1, we established the core idea of trying to avoid talking in these shortcut methods that are so often springing up in social forums, and to try to instead really focus on some of the nitty-gritties in the language of StarCraft. It's not a good defensive opening. It's an opening that holds off this rush and this rush and this rush and this rush. Because we want to not just say, I'm playing defensive and it holds off these. Because hell, if you're doing a defensive opening and it doesn't hold off 4 rush strategies, it's actually just bad. Yeah! So cool. One thing, again, that I want to bring up is that way that people discuss Ling Baneling Muta versus Marine Tank Medivac in Terran versus Zerg. It is not which one is better in flat, simple terms. It's a lot about specific tactics, specific ideas that can help swing an advantage to you. So here what we're going to look at is the really simple Terran versus Protoss mech opening, why it's good. We're going to talk about a couple of tactics, but most importantly, the order of buildings. Excellent. And we want to try to avoid language like, okay, this allows him to put pressure on. Because that is a shortcut terminology. I should be able to state it for someone who does not know a lot of those ideas. In particular, what I want to discuss and point out with this very game is the fact that this is not a one-sided gimmick strategy. Mech should not function that way, in my eyes, if it's to be considered some sort of viable strategy. Instead, what I want to do is I want to say something like, wow, look at this, this is really close. Here is what protosses should do to try to take it out. In Part 3, we're going to look at a lot of that weakness. So great. Fast factory opening. Killing off probes is good because we hate workers, because it helps our opponent get money. And we don't want him to have any money. Excellent. The opponent is Huang Xin. I don't know who Terry is, but he's pretty good. Zooming right along. Great. Starport, fast tech lab. Why are we building a bunker right now? Because a stalker finishes at around 4 minutes and 15 seconds with a usually timed build, which means that a zealot and stalker can get here a little bit earlier than that. This SCV spotted that no rush had quite begun, but we still should have this bunker finished, so that way we don't lose our front. And of course, to secure this expansion. Again, I'm talking in the language of StarCraft. This is not a bunker to hold off rushes. This is a bunker to hold off specifically the stalker that pops out. Boom. So, right off the bat, we see Cloaked Banshee coming up for Terry. His name's just Terry. I'm not going to go every single time. No real need. Good old command center pops up. Cool. We also deflected a little push here. Now, this reactored barracks, there's a variety of things that can be thrown at us early. Sure, an early expand is going down, but things like, let's take, Void Rays are a big one. A lot of immortal sentry pushes to just straight up bust the front. A lot of big gateway pushes. Sure, if you get a Banshee, that's going to help against 2 of those. That's going to help against a lot of immortal sentry pushes early on, a lot of 6 gates with no robo early on. But the Void Ray you're going to have a lot of trouble with if it comes too quickly. You'll be going for your Cloaked Banshee, and it'll pop out and boom, a Void Ray's there. The Marines help deal with this huge range problem. Banshees are really good in specific spots. Blue Flame Hellions and tanks are really good in specific spots. And if I had time, I would name them. But Marines are good at the variety of things, some of which I have mentioned. And again, notice still some of the issues with potential vagueness in what I said. Hellions are good at specific things. What I would want to do ordinarily is list all of those out explicitly. I'm not going to go through listen this particular daily because I'm hoping you can go that extra step.
Complete.
And of course you can. You guys are all geniuses.
Complete.
But just want to make that very, very clear. Now, what is something we brought up? What is something that we brought up in the last game?
Our SCVs.
We brought up the fact that Banshees are really good at containing the opponent. Because all of a sudden, Huangson is going to have to defend with his stalkers and observers. Why? If the stalkers leave, we kill the probes. If the other units leave, we kill those units. Easy. Also want to note that Banshees help kill off a bunch of builds outright. Fast Dark Templar plays after he early expands, outright killed because he doesn't have detection. I don't even need to list him. Any build where he goes for outright no robo, we kill. Boom. Done. Sweet.
Under attack.
While this is all going on, we're noticing that second Banshee pops out. Very, very typical. Armory pops up after that. Pretty typical. A Raven is going to get started here. Now, why does a Raven make sense right now? Well, we have distracted our opponent with this Banshee. He has to spend time dealing with the Banshee. And because he cannot leave his base without too huge of risks, this allows us time to get up a Raven. Again, to avoid ambiguity, you would not say, Banshees buy time for Ravens. You would say, if he leaves, I kill off all his stuff, and I might take some damage. But if he doesn't, then I get this Raven out. Still, you have to be a little bit careful there. You see what I mean? You can't say, Banshees buy time for Ravens. Huangson could very well just box everything, come attack your base, and you'd probably have to pull your Banshees back. You'd still win, but you'd have to pull them back. I'm going to start being a little bit more shortcutty with my language. I just like to be very specific initially. So we're building Marines 2 at a time, we're getting a Raven, and our economy lines up quite nicely to where we can get a Thor. In the next game, I'm going to talk a little bit more about these geyser timings. But suffice to say, you get your 2 geysers at your expansion up quickly, and you get this you get your first and second refinery up quite quickly as well. Now I'm going to speed things up and go to the Terry Cam. Aw yeah, in the Terry Cam. Getting vehicle plating level 1 right away. A lot of players love to do this because Zealots hit twice, so that means you get +2 armor against them. At this point in time, we're basically going Raven, or we're basically going Thor, Marine, Banshee. Banshee's still being produced. I actually did a podcast in Brood War about this idea called redundancy and purpose, where we want to try to extend the purpose of all our buildings as long as possible. I want to eliminate redundancy as much as possible. For instance, if we're worried that there is a DT in our main, if we scan a turret, we have done a redundant action. The turret can detect and the scan can detect. We should do one or the other. Likewise, if you build a starport right now, you don't want to use it just once to get some Banshees up and then you're finished. You can extend the purpose of the starport by, for instance, moving it over here and building medivacs or Vikings and giving this tech lab to something else. Terry is actually continuing to build the Banshees. I want you to notice right now that for much of the early game, this barracks was producing Marines 2 at a time, and only after we've begun to make Thors and Banshees regularly do we even start that reactor with a factory. Hellions are very, very expensive, and if we're building Hellions 2 at a time, it will eat into our ability to do everything else. So we started our upgrade early. We started getting some of these bigger units early, like the Thor, like the Raven and the Banshees. We got our expansion up, and now we're going to come back and we're going to get some Hellions. Also notice the lack of redundancy here. The Banshees are going to do just as good a job of killing off workers early on. We don't need to get Hellions and Banshees really, really quickly, unless we know exactly why we're trying to kill off so many of his workers. But this is a much simpler build. There are ways to do harassment with both. But look at this. 2 factories and a starport for a pretty long time. If you think about the way that the bio works in Terran versus Protoss, you end up with a bunch of barracks super ASAP, right? You end up with at least 3 around the time you're expanding, and a lot of times you go up to 5 or even 6, and you even have your reactor with a starport. But here, we have only 1 reactor and only 2 other buildings. Pretty expensive. Pretty expensive. Also notice, no tanks. No tanks, okay? Why no tanks? Why are we good right now? Well, what builds have we killed off outright? Anything that doesn't have a robo. Cool, so he has a robo. Our DT's a problem. No DTs are going to be an issue because as we can see, is the Raven there? I can't actually tell. Where the hell's the Raven? Is it there? I can't actually see it. Look, oh, there it is. Oh my God! Woo! Whoa! Sorry. I'm actually blue and darker blue colorblind. I couldn't see it there on the ramp. Woo! There he is. Bam! All right, cool, sweet. All right, our DT's a problem. Well, not really, because we already have all this detection up. Notice we don't have redundancy of missile turrets and this Raven. Notice also that we've already gotten the chance to poke into his base a little bit. We sort of see what tech pattern he's going. That's thanks to these Banshees. If for some reason he was making a bunch of air, we could easily respond because we have Thor and Marine. Helps quite a bit, and the Raven just for a little bit of added benefit. Phoenixes can pose some problems if your Raven's caught off guard. Easy peasy. Still kind of containing him. And if we come to the everyman cam, Huang Xin is doing a pretty good job of deflecting. Again, only 7 workers really killed this game. Alright, let's talk about transition time. No upgrades of any form yet. Why? Why no blue flame? Well, are we attacking with blue flame Hellions soon? Probably not. I mean, I don't really see a timing push to move out. Just continually building these Banshees up. Alright, cool. Getting a second tech lab up because, again, man, Hellions are so expensive. Expensive because you can build 2 of them at a time and because you can, they build really, really fast. So you can burn a ton of money really quickly. Now, here's something interesting to note. No tanks at all. Our small numbers of Thor Banshee can easily deal with, numbers of gateway units. If he gets some zealots, well, we have actually a hell of a lot of Hellions right there. You can't actually see them, but now that I've selected them, you can see them pop up. And as we're getting ready to move out, boom, there's the Infernal Pre-Igniter. Cool. Kind of linked up with when this thing happens. Still no tanks. Don't really see that purpose for tanks yet. This will suffice. And by the way, I'm not saying that if you got tanks, they would suck. What I'm saying is, it is okay that this player is doing something other than building tanks. These will absolutely crush the Zealots. And last question I want to go over, what if he got a bunch of Zealots and attacked us earlier? Part of the reason that we got this Terran vehicle plating right off the bat. Does a lot to wound the Zealot's damage output. Now, what did we talk about in terms of extending purpose? Okay, this barracks has been amazingly active all game long. First, getting a reactor, so that way it can churn out Marines 2 at a time. Now, before we go to expand, we're going to start building ghosts. Oh, yeah, that's right. This barracks is actually very, very active in this game. The starport has remained very, very active. Our Banshees are still poking and prodding around. Really, really fun way to play. We haven't really scouted anything else. Cool. This is kind of okay to put the Raven here because we know what sort of tech path he's going. This is to kill off observers. And now, as we have our 3 factories up, as we've gotten a ton of Banshees, now it's time to get the command center, get another factory. And as we begin to move out to our 3rd, that's when it's tanky time. Tanky time. We're actually getting ghosts before we start building tanks. Pretty cool, huh? Now let's talk mid-game tactics. All these blue flame Hellions out in the middle of the map, moving forward right as our giant fleet of Banshees is moving out. We're kind of poking around. Zealots are, as it turns out, really bad versus blue flame Hellions. But the big problem with Terry is that he doesn't kill off any Zealots. He brings them down to red life, and then they die. Cool, really cool harassment. This can die very quickly. But feedback is a great response. Feedback actually works very beautifully against Mech. Especially with these full energy Thors. Num num num. Huangson, I think, is doing a pretty remarkably good job against Mech, especially considering how infrequently you end up seeing it. And now Terry, who's tried to do a little bit of harassment tactics, has killed off a good amount of workers throughout this entire game. Takes himself a 3rd, no planetary fortress. This game was largely about seeing the basic build order, some of the tactics. Controlling some space, killing off some Hellions, pretty annoying. But the tank production begins late, right as we're getting the 3rd, and I think that is one of the more important aspects. Sure, we can continue to Blue Flame Hellion drop, but we're just building stuff up. We're upgrading, building Hellions, getting ghosts up. Huangson's actually going to come up here for a big attack in a second. And we're going to watch it in slow motion because, again, we want to get a sense of how good our army is. And why do these sorts of harassment drops? Let's talk about it one more time in the language of StarCraft 2 rather than using any shortcuts. A Blue Flame Hellion drop is good because, one, it allows us to kill off probes, which reduces his rate of income, which means he's going to have a harder time reinforcing against our giant death push. Cool. And, of course, the goal is to do more damage to the probe line than we suffer from losing all those Hellions and medivacs. Second big thing about the Blue Flame Hellions is that it will generally pull Huangson's units back to defend. Many times, some of this army will retreat, allowing our slower army to get into good position. What does in position mean? Well, we have to siege our tanks up, so we need to go somewhere and then siege up. We'd like somewhere to be closer to his base rather than like here. If he can pull back far enough and we can start off sieging here, saves us a bunch of time. Here comes the big push. Come on, Huangson. Come on. Yep, here is the push. Zealots do not stay alive very long at all. There's some feedbacks that go on. This is a very nice looking army. Our ghosts are now dead. Some of these tanks are not sieged up. Point defense drone goes down. Most importantly, some of these tanks are not sieged up. Feedbacks did manage to land on some of the units. And right when you think that Huangson is going to crush through this front line, absolutely not. Terry ends up cleaning it up without much of an issue. Mech is really, really, really strong in these final confrontations. Wow. Really awesome. Really cool. So, in that game, what did we talk about? A lot of the ideas of TvP. Let's see, how long have we been going? 17 minutes. Okay, cool. That was longer than I thought that would take. Whatever, let's just have a longer part 2. What I'm going to go into now is a game between Vile Illusion and Vile Doro, where we're going to see the same build, but rather than talk a lot of reasoning behind it, I want to go through the start of the build. And look at Vile Illusion. Vile Illusion actually sent me a bunch of games of his, so I really appreciate that. But Vile Illusion, what am I going to talk about? Oh yeah, in the last game, I gave tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of reasons behind everything. What I want to do this time is just state what he's doing, because I know a lot of you will want to just copy the build and then see how it feels, and that'll help build your intuition. So let's do exactly that. 12 racks, 13 refinery, no big deal. We build the factory, and then following this, we're going to build a refinery as quickly as we can. This gives us gas, so that way we can get ourselves happy time, Banshee time. Aw, yeah. And then here comes, bum-ba-dum, a starport attack lab for the starport. And what do I think is really important? Reactor barracks. I increasingly am going to think that that is very, very important in this matchup. And what do you know? That's what he does. Cloak comes up immediately, as does a Banshee. There we go. Only 3 Marines, very common. Watch a lot of Empire Happy's games. Happy likes going Banshee. Happy likes getting 3 Marines. I don't quite know how I feel about this first Hellion, but whatever. I don't think it's as important to the build. As you're building Banshee number 1, build a command center, and build Banshee number 2. Never stop building SCVs. Even though you got your reactor barracks up early, chill out, baby. You go to build Marines in a little bit of time. There's the Marines coming out 2 at a time. There's the Armory. Armory gets started, excuse me, a little while after we build Banshee 2. With the starport, the decisions are pretty clear. You go Banshee, Banshee, Raven, Banshee, Banshee. You get it? Good. Alright, I don't need to discuss timings. Cool. And then we start building Thors as we can afford them from our armory being done. You'll notice a little bit of bumpiness in this build. A little bit of bumpiness here. It's okay. I'm just going for the basic ideas. You will be able to rearrange it and optimize it a little bit more. But either way, Banshee's helping to contain, keep the units in the base with observers. Look at Doro's vision. This is the most aggressively placed unit on the map. Cool, let's go back to some more what's. Going back to some more what's. We get our orbital command right away. When we transfer our workers, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? That's right, we build 2 geysers right away. We start building our Thor. That's quite good. I actually think Illusion is getting this factory a little bit too early. I don't think that you quite have the gas to both get this factory, build Thors 2 at a time, and build Banshees. So Illusion cuts the Banshees out of the picture altogether, and now he is going Thor Marine. He builds a 3rd command center as he can afford it. And now I want you to just note some real basics. All you got to do right now is just start noting the basic structures. The important thing is that you know how to use these 3 buildings, your 1-1-1 mix right at the start. At this point in time, the most important concepts are that you want 2 tech lab factories, 1 reactor factory. And then, as you're taking your 3rd, you want to start getting ghosts. Get ghosts started before you get tanks started. I don't know whether I like attack or armor better. I can think of a lot of good reasons that armor is better, but however, the Neanderthal in me likes stuff to blow up. So I generally get attack. And literally, that is as sophisticated as my thought process is. Excelente. Cute. Notice a lot of Marines. Really cool. And hey, look at that. Look at that. We're starting to get some tanks up as we're taking our 3rd. Vile Illusion looks like he is delaying the ghosts. I don't think that's terrible. I like getting the ghosts up earlier. I just am a fan of the ghosts. I recommend to you to do the same thing that we saw Terry do in the previous game, where he gets the Ghost Academy started and gets this barracks starting to be useful right away. Predominance of those Banshees. And from then on out, we just slowly add on factories, slowly add on more and more stuff. Vile Illusion delays Infernal Pre-Igniter for a long time. In all his games, he does that. Notice that. Be comfortable delaying. Be very, very comfortable delaying. You don't want to get it up too early if your Hellions aren't really going to step out. I mean, in the early game, we had bunkers and Thors here. You didn't need to get your Blue Flame out. Now I probably would start getting the Blue Flame up. So this game ends up being kind of more epic than the other ones. Again, it's a pretty high food push. We don't have Blue Flame. We have 1-1 instead of 2 armor and 0 attack. All our tanks get sieged up. We can kill off the Observer. Very important to note the first Observer that gets killed off. Feedbacks, cool. Doro hits from a very good angle with a very low Zealot force. And it wins! Yeah! So suddenly Vile Illusion is not feeling too good about any of this, but hey, he killed off the Observer with those Thors right off the bat. And that is wreaking absolute hell. And because this army is going to have to stay with an Observer, suddenly Illusion now has more time to rebuild all his tanks, to reestablish a good position, and more importantly, to secure this 4th base. There's going to be some scary times coming up. I like the idea of rebuilding tanks during battle. During battle, rebuild tanks. During battle, rebuild tanks, because when the attack is done, if he's suddenly coming to get you, you want to have the ability to siege up. At this point in time, I think that Doro really needs to begin doing things like Warp Prism Harass in the main. We'll see more of that later on down the line. But it's important to sort of see the way that these battles end up feeling and playing out. Oh, you see those ghosts popping into action? Only getting a couple feedbacks. Extremely strong composition in Mech team. Especially these Banshees. I think the Banshees will increasingly be the key if people want to start trying to do more and more Mech. It's fun to say, yeah, I only build things out of factories, but Banshees are cheap enough. They take forever to build, so that makes them not very expensive, because you're not really spending very many minerals or gas per minute to get them up. But they're just so good. The instant he has any lack of anti-air, which means that basically the stalkers die, then you're in really good shape. Things that Vile Illusion should really be doing, throwing down a lot of planetary fortresses. A ton of planetary fortresses. Planetary fortresses are cheap on gas. 550 minerals, 150 gas for planetary fortresses. You can cut one tank to build a planetary fortress. I think that is pretty important. And also in the late game, you'll notice you get a huge surplus of minerals. I would start going absolutely crazy with the Hellion Harassment, full well knowing that even if I lose them all off, it is not as big a deal. And again, the same composition, not that many tanks, still making sure to get a good amount of Thors, surprisingly few Hellions, and a nice little mixture of Banshees. I think a medivac, just maybe 1 or 2 seems like a lot of medivacs to get, because that will eat into your Banshee count, but I think that that would probably help. Run-bys are probably going to be the most helpful. But suddenly, Doro and Vile Illusion, despite really only getting in direct engagements, Vile Illusion comes out looking very, very, very good. Tanks are just so stupidly strong. But I like the fact that in this game we got to see a number of direct engagements. We got to see a little bit of back and forth swing with Doro pulling back here, but having the tanks up to defend. Tanks are really good against Stalkers. I will have you know. I think that's basically all I wanted to get across from this game. Again, so now we have a sense of a basic skeleton framework of a build that works out quite well. We've seen it work 3 games in a row. In part 1, we saw very easy engagement defense by illusion. In game number 2, we saw some cool tactics, a very clever ordering by Terry, and again, a nice defense. In this game, a little bit more swinginess going on. But we saw that Protoss absolutely has potential to hold off Mech, as we saw Doro do. We pointed out that more counter-attack harassment, such as Warp Prism drops, are going to be good throughout the game because it forces the tanks to unsiege and move around. And last but not least, we saw how pivotal Banshees are throughout the entire process. That scanning, killing observers with Thors, and then having the Banshees wreck things down, really good. Interestingly, the first person I saw do this sort of combination Thor killing the observers and then getting Banshees was Pain User. If you go back and watch MLG Dallas Championship 2010 and watch Pain User against Liquid Tyler, you'll see Pain User start off with Bio and transition into Thor Banshee. Very, very common mix. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. Protoss, by the way, was also getting attack and armor. I think it's better to get the attack. I think so. It just doesn't seem to make that much sense to me to do something like get +1 armor so that way his tank does 49 damage instead of 50. Yeah, I don't know. And Zealots are also really bad against Mech. Be careful with that. I guess you have to be very careful with them. There are definitely places where they have their use. Sweet. Part number 3, I want to point out things that can go wrong. We're going to look at problems with the opening and problems in the late game. Aw, yeah! See you for part number 3 of 4 of this survey of Mech in Terran Week. Yeah, see you in 2 minutes. See you in 2 minutes.